It's like chugging along. It's like the internet knows it's Friday the 13th.
Just to this point, actually, maybe I can ask a question. Do you find trouble with Zoom as well sometimes?
Oh, yes. I mean,
All right, okay.
I have a
It's not just me
beautiful,
then.
no, it's a love-hate situation. And I honestly think that right now, you know, Zoom is there are lots of updates just in tech in general. I feel like so things are really slow with cell phones and technology and just all of it has these delays. So it's like the level of patience I have developed in 2020 is pristine.
And you know what that is, of course, is Jupiter, Pluto, and Saturn in Capricorn.
Well, success has happened here. All right, you guys, welcome to today's Eat and Greet. And I hope in the next hour, we're going to give you something that is worth the time you took to show up. And I love this. Not only is it Friday the 13th here in the United States, which is very, very cool. We are a day before we've got some moon energy activated in Scorpio, which is just crazy exciting. But also, it seems like without trying, we have this trend of kind of being reintroduced to the planets on the Eat and Greets here lately, which has been phenomenal. We re-looked at the sun last night with Vanessa Montgomery, and today we're going to see some different faces of Mars with Julian. Thank you, sir, for coming.
Hey, Stormy, how's it going?
Yeah, phenomenal, right? Like this is the thing. I really
It's a real
think
pleasure to be invited on your show. I've heard lots about it, I've watched bits and pieces and thinking it's fab.
I love that you said fab in an English accent, which has basically made all of Friday for me.
Right on.
I can
Excellent.
go in peace now, right now. Yes,
I'll remember to say fab again later. All right.
please do. Insert at every point.
I'll
So
drop it every so often.
so thank you so much for coming over. And it's neat because just through connection this year, we got to meet up and I got to kind of see what you're into. And you were just so passionate about talking about Mars. And I think it's fabulous. You taught me something that actually came into a teaching I did early in the year to look at Mars differently,
Wow.
look at his
Excellent.
history.
Oh,
Yes,
really good. Right.
thank you.
Well, thank you. Right. Brilliant. Well, I mean, it's interesting because I discovered Mars. I started to look at it once Mars had gone into Aries. Uh, I've got Mars in Scorpio myself in my natal chart. So when Mars went into Aries, it started getting a big boost. And what did it for me was there was on the 4th of August, there was a massive explosion in Beirut, okay, that was actually set off by what actually happened was it was a chemical fertilizer, okay, which is used for industrial growing of crops. All right, so it was ammonium nitrate, and it had been sitting in a Dockland warehouse for 7 years, unmonitored, and it had broken down to the point that it became really dangerous, and it just went off.
Mm.
And the explosion was this huge sudden thing that happened in the city of Beirut, and it was exactly at the moment of the Jupiter Mars square. It was almost to the minute that it happened. So this was the first Mars square. So look on your charts for the 4th of August, 2020. And it was actually at 7 minutes past 6 or 1807 in Beirut in the Lebanon. And Jupiter was rising in the east. And this is the key to how I understood what led me to this point, was that Jupiter rising in the east. So I started thinking about that, and I was looking at a map of Lebanon, and I suddenly realized that, well, there's here's the planet turning kind of thing, and Jupiter was coming up in the eastern side across Lebanon. And I suddenly realized that there was a really interesting ancient temple complex in Lebanon that had often called my attention. I'd often thought, well, that looks interesting, and it's called the Baalbek Temple Complex. Okay, Baalbek, a lot of conspiracy theorists really dig it, you know, because it's like very mystical and very strange, and you know, so get it up on your Google Images and start looking at that, right? You know, because it's really fascinating, and it's exactly, the Baalbek temple complex is exactly the same latitude, almost to the minute, of where Beirut is. In fact, Beirut docks they're so in a straight line. Okay, so like that kind of east-west line, the latitudes, you know, bing, Baalbek 50 miles inland from Beirut. And I thought, well, I'll look this up, you know, it's quite interesting, you know. And things just progress from there. So this Baalbek temple complex is, yeah, very, very, very powerful. And it was set up as a fertility worship center from about 5000 BC is some of the earliest stuff they've got there. And they used to worship different gods there, including one called Hadad, one called Balal. And then later on, when the Romans got hold of the place, they turned it into Jupiter and Bacchus. And I started to just look into all these Roman gods, and realized that then that the Romans had a whole different way of worshipping Mars, because this was the Mars square, Jupiter, that triggered it. So, and Mars therefore was the god that was speaking, if you like, to Jupiter. So, and Jupiter is big and Mars is fiery. So you get something big and fiery. It was a massive explosion. Now, this idea that what it was this fertilizer. Okay, so that's actually what was exploding, right? So the attention was drawn to what this substance was and what it does. And in our world today, in our modern world, we really need to think about how we work with nature, okay? How we work with growing cycles, with understanding the seasons, understanding nature, and trying to find an alignment back to that. There's a really big missing thing going on where we're not doing, collectively I'm talking about, where we're not looking after the earth like we should. So industrial farming methods, of course, are one of the worst ways of going about looking after the planet. In fact, it's very destructive. So in a way, the gods, if you like, were saying, this ammonium fertilizer ain't no good, folks. You know, you've got to do something about it, like blow it up, get rid of it, kind of thing. And here's a good example, okay? So on that latitude, you know, Jupiter was exactly square, Mars came along and squared it. It was like ping ding, you know. Yeah. And so I was thinking, well, fertilizer, and then what, you know, that was in my head. It was fertilizer, it was farming. And then 50 miles away on exactly the same latitude were these ancient temple complex that is very, very, very mystical and very powerful, of fertility. Okay, so they would go there to worship the fertility gods. All right. So this is all kind of keying up in my head. You know, I was starting to really think about it, and it was like being an adventure. As I said, it's like going into like that bit in the Indiana Jones thing where he has the staff and he sticks it in the ground and he puts the ruby red beam of light and it goes down like this. And I felt like a bit like that, like a kind of astrologer with the light kind of going, whoa, what's happening here? And it just sort of fell together in this kind of moment, you know, where I sort of thought, well, this is really interesting. And so I started looking more towards what Mars was doing. Now, I'm writing a book at the moment, which I hopefully will have another interview with me when the time comes, when I get the book published. But there's I've been looking into Mars, okay, and what I've discovered is the Romans had many types of Mars, okay, and I think it's time that collectively we, at the world of astrology, our collective little global community, if you like, started to maybe look at Mars a bit differently. Because everyone's often very happy to say, oh yes, Mars the warrior god, Mars the fighter, Mars the, you know, but what about this? And think about it like this, okay? Mars, right, rules spring equinox, March 21st through to April 21st, right? That first month of spring is called March, right? Which of course is named after the Roman army who would march. They would start their campaigns yeah, based on March being when the sun goes into Aries, it's exalted. It's a good time to feel that Mars energy. So they would start making advancements in their own way. Yes, that has qualities of being warriorship and so forth, or conquerors. But also what's going on in nature, right? You know, what actually happens, right, is suddenly nature becomes alive, right? And there's a massive growing season, right? Everything starts to go, right? So all the branches that were cold in winter start to spring forth with all the buds out of the ground. Stuff starts bursting out, you know, and growing very fast. And they're all seeking the light, and it's very competitive, right? In nature, they are all, the way that the plants are so competitive, okay? And that's actually what happens, right? So they're reaching up because they want to get their leaves to the sun more than anything else. And of course, you watch what happens in nature, and things take over each other, right? They'll want something will dominate. What grew the fastest, right? So in a way, there's that competition in nature, right? Now, the Romans totally saw this, right? Totally understood this. And for, of course, throughout human history, this is a total understanding, right? But in our modern astrology, we just go, yeah, Mars the fighter, Mars the warrior. You know, yeah, right, okay, yeah. But what about Mars the growing planet, right? Mars the nature planet, Mars the planet of fertility that tries to make things turn green and lush and whoosh, you know, with its growing energy, right? And of course, the Romans totally knew this, and they had many types of Mars, right? The one that I found that I really liked is Mars Silvanus. Okay, Mars Silvanus, beautiful name, right? Silva, Silva, means forest or trees in Latin. So it's the Mars of the trees or the forest, right? And he would be pictured often naked with a pruning knife and a dog. Okay, that was his style. That was his kind of his.
Who doesn't want to be naked with a knife and a dog?
Yeah, you know,
I don't know. I can't think of
he's
anybody.
pictured like that. Also wearing a helmet, by the way. just
I mean,
to
the
add to the
sun.
imagery there.
You have to protect your body from the sun.
And so you know, he would be the god of nature and of fertility and of agriculture. Okay, and he was very protective, and he was not like a warrior as such, as something who looked over nature to ensure things would grow and be fertile. And he was a really popular god. Okay, I mean, hugely popular in Roman times. All right, and another thing to add to that, is Roman soldiers, when they would serve their time, they do 20 years in the army, and when they were done, they would be given a plot of land. Right, because then it would be like, yeah, take your conquering warrior thing and go towards agriculture, right? Go towards the green things in life, right?
Right.
So in a way, Mars is like a green planet, right?
Yeah.
So instead of it being, yes, it rules the color red, and you know, of course it does, you know, but it also has a life energetic nature force about it that really needs to be recognized or rediscovered. And more than that, and this is for, you know, I'm leaving this open for people to do. It's good fun for an astrologer to do. Anybody who's interested in this can welcome to email me or chat to me about this. But there are many types of Mars, okay, and there are many types of gods of Mars. The Romans had about 8 or 9 different types of Mars.
Yeah.
Two of the ones that I think I've become aware of are Mars Ultor, that's Ultor, which sounds brilliant, right? That's Mars in Scorpio, right? It's a Scorpio Mars, Mars Ultor, yeah? So it's spelled Ultor. It sounds like the ultimate, or the, you know, it's a powerful Latin word, Ultor, Mars Ultor.
Yeah.
You know,
So
and then there's another one called...
We're going to see somebody's new YouTube channel, and they're going to be called Mars Ultor, and we'll give all the credit to you.
and there's another one which is Mars. Hang on a minute. the name is Mars Grobovius, okay? Grabovius, and that's Mars in Taurus, because of course this bovine is in there, right?
Yeah.
But Bovi, Grobovius, and that's very Mars in Taurus. So wherever Mars is in your chart, you might be able to assign one of the original Roman gods to your Mars, okay? So what I'm trying to say there is it's worth looking into to look at all the different types of Marses that there were. And I said there were quite a lot, I think there was maybe 8, 9 or 10 of them. And then the Romans would worship them at different times of year and according to their different conditions. So if you look at things like dignities and stuff, then you start to get a better idea of, the condition of Mars, Now, based on that, I was thinking about this a lot more, and then it occurred to me, I don't know what, it all just came to me over a course of a couple of weeks as I was doing my research. But on television in the UK, in England, there are a couple of very popular gardening programs, okay, where people, grow vegetables, grow flowers, shrubs, trees, mow your lawn, all that. Gardening programs, very popular, right? People love them, right? In England, because England, of course, is a very gardeners type of country, and so basically they the two, I thought, well, I don't know why, but I was drawn to look at their charts. So there's two very famous gardeners. One is called Monty Don. He presents something that he has like a 3 million following, people
So
really
a
dig in,
small lot.
And there's another chap called Alan Titchmarsh, right? Who's another, and I looked at their charts, okay? And it turns out that one of them's got Mars in Taurus, right? The other one's got Mars in Cancer, right? So they're both detriment Marses, and they both present gardening programs. And I thought, there's a way to diffuse an angry Mars, right? A difficult Mars or an angry Mars is you go into the woods, or you go into the greenery, you go to the gardening plot, you grow vegetables, orchards, vegetables, you get green, right? And that's how to work with your Mars.
That's
right?
beautiful. I
think so.
Beautiful.
Right? And when you think about this important Mars in Aries at the moment, that it's doing a retrograde, that it hasn't done a retrograde in Aries since 1941, then it's giving us a really important message at the moment. It's trying to tell us something by holding its place so strongly in its sign that it rules, right?
Power.
Squaring earthy planets, Jupiter, the teacher, the learner, the philosopher, but earthiness, Capricorn, right? So it's like saying, get your spade and your fork and your trowel and start digging the earth, right? Because also the coronavirus is based around the mistreatment of nature, right? Why else has this happened? Pandemics occur when there's an imbalance that's what viruses are. There's an imbalance in the structure. Something has to be adjusted. So maybe the Mars in Aries right now is saying, wake up, everybody, right? Because actually you need to get into nature more, right? That's actually what we need to do. Okay. And that is where people who are frustrated, angry, aggravated, and all the Mars words, if you go into nature, it calms you down, right? It does. It just does. It's a beautiful thing to do, right? So based on this, I've been thinking that's what it's all about, and that it was the Beirut explosion that did it. The fertilizer, the wrong substance to use in nature blew up, and it was exactly in line to the fertility, to what really is, the worship of the gods of fertility. So, fertilizer, fertility. So I put it all together, and that's what I've come up with. So I think that Mars we need to see it in a way that one can have dominion, right? One can have dominance, which is Mars words. One can conquer one's plot, of land, by putting energy and focus, into the land, and not massive. You don't have to get massive, great projects. It's just what you can do. You know, maybe that's a window box on a windowsill if you're in a city apartment, whatever. Right? It's just about connecting to things, so that when Mars is in Aries, okay, or you know, the Aries is the spring forth. You know, all the growth and the greenery and the planting of the seeds that then burst open, and things start growing. Later on in the year, you get Mars, and you get the Scorpio Mars, which is the mulching down, you know, when everything is breaking down, which is what a Mars does as well, because Mars does break apart, right, or break down something. So when all the leaves fall off the trees, and they're mulching into the compost, and then of course compost, if you, I don't know if you know if you do any gardening or anything, but compost gets hot. Yeah, it does, right? It actually does. It actually generates heat when you do it properly. It actually is a hot substance. And that's very Mars Scorpio, because it's also mulch, you know.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm talking like gardener type stuff here, but it's all stuff to consider and think about, you know.
Yeah.
And if you take gardening as like a metaphor, you know, of what we do, you know, we try to go into life to grow things. We're growing in ourselves as well as growing in our outer world. You know, we're growing in our inner world as well, because one gets deep satisfaction when you see plants grow. I was doing some this year because of the lockdown, because of the whole, you know, the coronavirus.
Right.
I did loads of gardening in my garden, more than I've ever done before in my life. And I was really, really so excited. It was such a wonderful experience. I planted tomatoes and all sorts of things, you know, everything, right? Peppers, and you know, and I watched them. I literally started them as seeds in the packet, popped them into soil, you know, into little pots, watched them grow, you know, replant. Then they produced all their stuff, and I've been enjoying it in the kitchen. I'm going like, that's amazing.
Right. You know? There is a sense of conquering victory to watch gardening happen. We've got basil downstairs, like crazy. Yeah. And you're right, there is a satisfaction to it, you know, which is actually funny, because my youngest daughter had an experiment at home to grow a plant, and it was for science, and they got to watch it. And she's a terrible gardener. Like, I don't know what happened to her plants, but they had no love for her. And it was just very funny to watch that her Mars didn't even care. She's like, why? My mom grows things. Right? She had no real interest in it. So it's an interesting way of even how each of our Mars gets satisfaction in the activity that we do.
Absolutely. And that's right there. That's what it is. It's about fun. It's about directing action and activity towards something to reach a goal, you know. Start with a seed, turn it into a tomato. Brilliant.
Yeah, it is brilliant. And I think, you know, especially if you've been practicing for a while, or I guess if you're new to this idea that if you have Mars in Taurus, you have Mars in Cancer, that's just it, you know, good luck with that. That's not it at all. Every chart, I believe, was built with exactly what we need to be doing. So instead of trying to align that Mars in Taurus with the Mars in Aries, like, you're not going to keep up with those people like that. That's not what's going to satisfy that. So instead, it becomes a very personal journey of what satisfies this. And then what happens, you end up with a lawn and gardening show with 3 million people. Whereas if you were trying to drive a sports car, nobody would care what you're doing.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And I got to tell you, I watch the Great British Bake Off like nobody's business.
It's lovely, isn't it? Very Moon. That's a very Moon program, you know, sustenance and food and Venus as well, because you make it beautiful, make beautiful cakes, you know.
Yes.
So it's a Moon Venus program, you know.
Oh my God. And I am keyed to the frequency of Venus. And so these people, I'm like, oh my God, their tart fell. And I'm telling my husband, and he's like super Aries, Mars and Aries. He's like, they'll be fine. I'm like, they will recover. All right. So you've got some charts, and I am dying because you've got the 1776 chart for the United States. And I would love to hear what's your perspective on that Mars.
Absolutely. And then, so we'll do that now. We'll do a bit of mundane. We'll look at the president's chart, right? President-elect's chart. And then just at the end, I want to talk a little bit about Mars archetypes, a little bit about what I've been looking into to give people some some nice food for thought. Okay.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
so I'll do a share screen. Let me just get that going now. Hang on a sec.
Yeah, sure. I have Mars in Libra, but it's a
Uh-huh.
mutual reception
Yeah.
with Venus in Aries. So there's a
Well
lot.
done.
We've got some beautiful Mars in Scorpio folks who say hello to you, which is nice. It's always nice
Good.
to be welcome.
Yeah. Excellent.
Mm,
So can you see the screen?
yes.
All right. So here we have, I use the 1710 time, the 10 past 5 in the evening,
Hmm.
Philadelphia chart.
Me too.
So I've always used that one. So this is called the Sibley chart, because there's a lot of people who contest the time on the 4th of July that the country started. Yeah. But I used the 10 past 5 one based on the fact that the Twin Towers was the Pluto crossed the ascendant as Saturn crossed the descendant. In 2001, the 9/11 rang very true across this axis. Okay, so that's how I go with that,
Okay.
that kind of. So I go with the 10 past 5 chart. Anyway, okay. So what we're looking at here is this Mars. We're talking about Mars today, This is Mars in Gemini. Gemini rules the hands and the arms, yeah? And Mars could be, of course, the weapon, as it were. And so this is the holders of weapons. And I know in America, there's a lot of issues around. And I'm speaking here as someone who's lived in England, but I have an American wife who lives with me here from Tennessee. My daughter was born in Tennessee as well. So
Okay. And I
one
just
day I'll
love
be
that.
back in America.
I just love that. Like, when I think of Great Britain and Tennessee, I do not think, oh, yeah, these two have just naturally come together. So the fact that you have a lovely wife from Tennessee, I'm like, well, he's in. We basically are going to make you an honorary American. That's it.
Yeah. Well, one day I'll get the green card,
Okay.
and so I'll be back one day. But we'll see how it goes, And but I understand, of course, that there is it's a very, let's call it the hot potato of political issues. Okay, that no one really, I know because we read the newspapers here in England, issues with NRA, issues with all sorts of stuff as to why no one's really acting on the gun laws and things.
Mm-hmm.
But this is because Mars here in Gemini, it's about, holding a weapon. Okay. And this goes back to the part of the culture, the cowboys and Indians, if you like, that kind of idea of thinking. I'm thinking sort of that sort of cultural movie kind of impression, of gunslingers, let's call them, Clint Eastwood, things like that. That kind of is in the American culture, if you understand what I'm trying to say there. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And in the chart, in the morning of the 4th of July, 1776, several planets were rising before the sun. Okay, so rising before the sun, Mars rose before the sun, would have already been rising in the sky, Venus and Jupiter, and then the sun rose. That is to say, if I was to do to animate that chart.
Yeah, and I want to point this out just really quickly, especially if you're new. The houses go 1 through 12 anti-clockwise, but that is not the motion in the sky. So look from Jupiter down towards Mars, and that's how we know what was rising before the sun, just in case you haven't learned that yet. Okay, I'm out.
What I'm going to do, actually, this is 4th of July, 1776, and I'll just briefly show you how that is, but Mars rose before everything else. Okay, Mars rose before the sun. So I'll just show you that very quickly. So everyone knows that the sun rises in the east in the mornings at sunrise. Okay, so and the ascendant is the eastern horizon. Okay, so here is the sun heading towards the eastern horizon, right, on the 4th of July, 1776.
Oh, we can't.
But before the sun could rise over the eastern horizon, then several other planets were queuing up to go first, right? And one of those, the first one leading the pack, if you like, was Mars, right? So just do it by hours, and there you can see Mars. So if you've been standing in Philadelphia at 3:10 in the morning, middle of the night basically, but if you've been standing there and looked to the east, yeah, you would have seen the planet Mars rising in the eastern horizon at 3:10 in the morning on the 4th of July, right? There's Mars popping over the eastern horizon, okay? So it's before the sun. So it's still nighttime. Mars came over the horizon. Another hour later, Venus and Jupiter appeared on the horizon, yeah? And then the sky would start to glow, right? You know, because the sun was going to rise. So there we go, at 4:10, then Venus and Jupiter. And if you look to the east, you would then see Mars still rising higher in the sky, right? And then behind it, there would have been two other planets, Venus and Jupiter. And then the sky would have started to glow a bit, right? Because the sun was coming up in the east, and there's another hour, and there it is, bing. Then the sky goes blue, and, well, it's daytime, right? So I'm just trying to show you that to give you an understanding. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
So here we go, Mars rising before the sun, okay? And this is interesting because in charts of famous people and people who, let's say, are on a mission, right, have Mars rising before the sun, okay? So this is something to look for in character and personality when you're doing chart things, you know, particularly look at famous people and what their purpose is and what they're doing. You look to what planets are rising before the sun, okay? It's called, I believe it's called Oriental.
The
because
Oriental.
it means in the east, okay? Occidental means in the setting, I believe, in the west. I hope I got that right, but I know it's Oriental, okay? So it's Oriental in the east, okay? So these are Oriental planets rising in the east before the sun. And there's the sun that pops over the horizon. As I said, sky, the daytime begins. So that's just to show you that was on the day of the 4th of July. But of course, the American independence, the chart's not time. It was time for 5:10 in the evening, in the afternoon, in the evening. And of course, there's, you know, everything had been happening, a normal day there in Philadelphia in 1776. And then everything's starting to set because it's the afternoon, right? But the fact remains is that these planets rose before the sun that morning, that day, okay? So Mars is called, now this is what the astrologer, ancient astrologer Dorotheus of Sidon, he calls it the flag wavers. The flag bearers, beg your pardon, the flag bearers. They're called flag bearers when the planets, because they're rising, they're going ahead of the king of the sun, right? So the sun is the king, and there they are marching in front or marching ahead, right, of the king, right? Because the sun is the so the flag bearers, the ones who wave the big flags, hey, he's coming, the king's on his way, whoa, hey, right? Now, if you think about that, right, with what's going on in America at the moment, 7th house Mars in Gemini, okay, and you think about Mars being that extension that could be seen as a gun or a weapon. Gemini's handheld weapons or whatever, right? And then flag bearers, right? And you've got your whole thing set up there, archetypally. There they are, you know, the ones where with doing all the malicious stuff and all that, waving those Trump flags and things like that. It's very kind of fits the bill, right? You know, it kind of fits that archetype quite strongly, right? I now want you to, everything okay, Stormy? Is this cool so far? Are we good?
Oh yeah, we're good to go.
Yeah.
I'm just
all right. So now have a look at this placement of Mars, right? It's 21 degrees Gemini, 21 degrees Gemini. Just want you to keep that in mind for a minute, because I'm now going to show you another chart, right? 21 Gemini. Mars in America's chart is 21 Gemini, and Donald Trump, right?
Oh, there we go. Okay.
Has his sun and his north node at 22 and 20 of Gemini, right? So America's Mars pops right nicely in between Teflon Don's node and sun, right? I call him Teflon Don because nothing sticks on him, right? He's famous for that, right? Do you know about his chart? Do you know, have you looked at the fixed
Oh
stars in his
my
chart?
gosh, I have looked extensively at this chart and the amount
He
of
was born at such a lucky moment. You know?
wow, he just Anywho,
He's got, I can't remember them all, but he's got, I think, 4 very powerful, bright, first magnitude stars in his chart, right?
sure. Well, and he has an
Like,
unaspected Pluto, which is that's pretty good.
yeah,
That's a pretty good thrust of power,
absolutely, absolutely.
putting the person aside when we look at the chart.
Exactly. So here's America's Mars, right? And what's he been doing, right? He's been heating, literally heats them up. When you've got a sun, hot planet, right, on Mars, it's going to be someone who heats up the whole story, right?
Sure. And
what's he been doing?
his orienting planet is Uranus in general. So that creates
absolutely
the sun with Mars, now with Uranian stardust on it. So it becomes very electric, very not what we've seen before.
Absolutely. So it's the rebel, right? So he's got that rising Uranus as the rebel or the awakener of something, right? So in a way, he is serving that kind of, he's been serving a very strange thing indeed. I'm not going to go too much into his chart, except to say that all these other planets are rising after the sun, right? So Mars then rises in the east, but it's after the sun, right? So he does all the sun stuff, but his actual leadership qualities are way down, right? He's not a flag bearer, right? He's not saying, I'm in advance of the king waving my flag. He's like in the tail, way back, right? In the order of things. His Mars rises quite late in the story, if you like, on the day that he was born. And as a result, it's kind of tails back, and it's probably very frustrated. It's a but a Mars in Leo is of course very hot, but probably quite lazy, to be honest. Mars in Leo can be very sit back and just enjoy the rays of the sun. Not really do much. Probably why he likes the color gold. Has everything gold. I think it's kind of part of his story there, with the very late ascendant on Regulus as well.
Sure. So, and that unaspected Pluto is like it's sprinkling just Leo, because Pluto is not bound by anything. So it's like, let's just Leo the hell out of this thing.
Yes. All right. Yeah. Larger than life, isn't it? And and of course, he was a TV star, right? And it's been total chaos in your country since he took the throne, right? Because he's a TV star, right? He doesn't know how to be a statesman or a diplomat, I mean, let's face it. He's a reality TV star. He loved telling people he loved to point at the people and say, you're fired, which is so Mars on the ascendant, by the way, isn't it? Right? Like the finger, you're fired, and then of course with his son on the America's Mars, so this is the Mars, and that's why he's orange, and he's just so, and he's got that very weird hair with that looks kind of like a sort of a very strange kind of bouffant sort of lion's mane of a kind, but it's not correct, it's not like a real lush hair, is it? It's kind of a weird sort of meringue topping or something,
But so we see this in his chart. So what does it look like in Biden's? What is his Mars doing?
So exactly, you see the difference, right?
Yeah, well, so, it's fascinating.
Say, you totally said it there, right? Because that's exactly what I'm going to talk about next. There's this Mars. He gets everybody hot, right? Trump gets everybody hot, and he's a TV star. He only knew how to tweet, really. That's what he did, because that was the closest to TV that he could do. So let's look at Biden's chart, right? Fantastic, right? Because, look at that. There you have sun, right? Mars rising before the sun. Yeah. So he's got a flag bearer, and it's in his domicile, right? Yeah. How powerful is that, right? Much more powerful, right? And in that quadrant of his chart that I mean, one could say Mars in the 12th, but it's very powerful there. All right.
And I think Biden is the only of the candidates, Pence doesn't count because we didn't have his time, but that didn't have Mars in Leo.
Right. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Excellent. A Mars in Scorpio. you know that they, well, I mean, just that Mars in Scorpio, it's about, he's been sitting there waiting for a long time to get this job, and he gets it, because when he does apply himself, he does it in a way that it has that kind of Marsy kind of strength, it's just the way it works. And he's got sort of a quite wide Mars square Pluto, and I suppose in a way that this is also, quite militaristic, actually. Let's face it. He's a veteran, so but he understands I can see him probably getting quite involved on the global stage over the next few years, as befits someone who is quite martial. He's quite Marsy based. He's going to be kind of that sort of person who will probably use that Mars force that he has. But we'll see. I'm hoping, of course, that he might do a really big green program. One hopes. He's got Mars in Taurus. He's got Moon in Taurus. I don't know. But he could be someone who. But it's interesting how he's going to motivate the troops. Let's call them. This could be actually the motivation of the people, not just It might not be the troops thing. He might actually turn the troops to go community oriented. To build a national network of saving the country.
Yeah, well,
build the bridges, the roads, get people getting agricultural. I mean, that could be how he uses that Mars. So I think it's very interesting how he gave one call to Boris Johnson in the UK, who's the UK Prime Minister, so therefore the UK's president, and Boris Johnson has just pretty much sacked his right-hand man. His two right-hand men have just left within sort of 48 hours of Joe Biden's first call. And I think, I've got to say, I think that's absolutely brilliant, because it just shows how powerful, the Britain's doing a classic. Britain is essentially shooting itself in the foot right now. For those of you who don't know, I don't know if I want to go into too much politics with.
Yeah, let's leave it there.
But Britain is leaving the European Union. And it's the biggest con that, if you understand what I mean by that, it's the biggest scam that's ever happened, but that politicians have been able to create. They really have run riots about making millions and billions off of Britain leaving the European Union. It's a huge scam, and everyone's suffering because of it, or is about to suffer majorly because of it. And I think
global stage is a trip right now. It is a real riot right now across the globe.
Yes, it is.
It's almost like, in a way, and I think it's on time, but it's almost like political pandemic as well. A little bit. Anyways, we will get off on a whole different topic. Let's not go there.
All right.
Because we'll be here for hours.
Yeah. So did you find that interesting, Stormy?
Absolutely. I think it's so neat to consider these. And I know that before we wrap up, we want to talk about some archetypes to leave people with, because that's the whole thing.
Yeah.
We want to leave you guys with something that you can grab your chart and say, okay, let me think about this archetype.
Yeah. So I just got a few sort of things to maybe add to what could be called the Book of Mars or something like that, because as I said, often people just talk of it as this fighter planet, the warrior, the fighter, the angry one, and things like that. But to add to some of that, which will is just some thoughts.
Oh, do you want to stop share?
Say again.
Do you want to stop your share?
Oh yeah.
Not that we don't all want to look at that chart forever.
Okay. So thank you. Some sort of Marsy type thing. It's known as Infortuna Minor, okay, is one of the Latin ways of referring to Mars. But let's have a think about, maybe it's in literature, which is where the archetype is often encountered. There's always going to be, how do you find, think of people like Chaucer, right, who wrote the Knight's Tale, right? That's a very Mars tale, okay? And so have a think about that, it's a beautiful poem, but it brings up a lot of Mars. So if you want to look around for some really interesting Mars keywords, have a look at Chaucer's The Knight's Tale. It's very chivalrous, okay? So it is the idea of the knight in shining armor on the horse, that you see in mythology and you see in fairy tales and you see in myths and legends. It is that, that character. It is things like, the idea of when they would gallop the two horses together, jousting, okay, is very, very Mars, okay, because it was a long pointed pole,
Yeah.
And so the idea of combat or martial is, the word Mars is in martial. It's very a sense of that. But one particular chap, I don't go into too much details of the literature and things, but someone very famous referred to it as Mars as being necessity's son, S-O-N, necessity's son. And that is like, because we have to have a Mars, you see, one has to push the Mars, there's an energy in life that you have to move forwards with. In order to find yourself or be yourself, you do have to have that quality about you. So there's a certain necessity, and so that necessity is in your chart as Mars, right? So there's Mars, you can expect things like the reference to maybe sound, right, is the din of something is quite Mars, okay? Because if lots of people are putting themselves forwards, right, then there might be a din,
Yeah.
or right, like a noisy, imagine a room full of people shouting, right? It's a din, right? So and so there's things like, but also the action of hammering, because of course that is very blacksmith, Aries, Mars. So the hammering sound, so therefore power tools and things like this are all very Mars. It's the sound. I'm talking about that kind of what comes into one's field of mind is, sounds that can be very Marsy. It's the idea of something that could be hewed or splintered, right? So it's H-E-W, right? So to hew it asunder, would be a reference in like a literal thing, would be like the action that it takes to split something or break something, and therefore that's a kind of Marsy word. These are just things I've been picking out of my own research. It's a bit wild. I'm dipping into things wildly, but I'm trying to find things that maybe people might not have thought about before, about how to understand Mars or to see Mars in action, Mars can be very haughty, H-A-U-G-H-T-Y, because it gets up on its horse, it's haughty, so it can be like, right, or looks down, or, very kind of, because it has that defensive and offensive. It's a defensive offensive kind of action. It's very mercenary, okay? So it's like, what do you want me to do? And that's actually what is the next, how I really want to describe Mars, because Mars being mercenary is like, it's a force or an energy that can be put to use, okay? And so in a way, it's the idea that it's the wrongs that are righted, okay? Because that's what Mars will do. Mars goes, something wrong, I'll get it right.
I'll fix it.
I'll fix it. And that is Mars, right? So when you're in your world and if you live astrology, and you're in the world around you and you hear these things, right? You're actually you're hearing Mars, right? Is it wrong? I'll right it, right? If it's meek, I'll rescue it, right? That is to say, okay, something needs rescuing. That's actually Mars, right? The cat's up a tree, right? Who's going to rescue it? Well, I don't know, someone is. The Mars person will, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Someone's boat broke down in the middle of the lake. Who's going to rescue them? The Mars person, right?
Yeah. And conflict.
Car on the side of the highway. The Mars person.
The Mars person.
Yeah.
Right.
That's the Mars archetype. They rescue the meek, right? Think about that. It's a good one because you see it, right? You might think, you'll see it. And I'm talking about like, predictive charts, horary, all that sort of stuff,
Sure.
Use that imagery, you see? And so it's about being very keen, right? Keenness. It's about, now this is the key, right, to what I've discovered from reading into literary with Mars, all right? Mars is indifferent to its effects.
Oh, yeah. Mars is like, it was broke. I fixed it. What do you want?
Yeah, exactly.
That's why. That is why
Yeah.
Mars and Venus are a good pair, because Venus is like, okay, but nicer.
Yeah.
Next time.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I love that. In the ancient stories, Venus, Aphrodite, was the only one Mars looked to appease or gave a crap about what she had to say. Everybody else, he's like, meh. Athena, who was his equal, he was like, and Venus comes along with her hair and life, and he's like, well, I made her mad. I don't like that.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Well, and it's also that it's that energy of Mars. It's like the big. Just imagine that kind of character, a bit caveman, right, with the big club, right, dressed in furs, right, comes along, waves the club around, whacks out loads of stuff, right, and just goes and walks off again, indifferent to its effects. You understand? That's kind of how Mars can be. If you took that as it's like that kind of idea of like, think of a cartoon character almost, that kind of the sort of, there's a sort of almost like an invincibility about it, right? But it's just like, we'll do that, boom. And it's so, but it doesn't matter, because if Mars is hired by evil, let's say, right, Mars will work his violence to evil ends, right? Yeah, that's what Mars will do, right? But if Mars is hired by good, Mars will work just as hard, but for worthy purpose.
Right.
Difference, right?
Yeah.
It's
superb, really.
It's the difference between say a fire starter, right? Someone who's going to cause problems with fire, right? An arsonist or something, right? That's going to be Mars working to evil purpose. But Mars working to worthy purpose is the fireman, right? You know what I'm saying? You see the difference?
Yeah, and they can be.
But Mars is everywhere, right? In society, but you've got to look for it and see where it's at, because it's an indifference. It just has that quality about it. It's like, how will it use itself, right?
Yeah.
How's it hired, right? Is it hired by evil or good? Virtuous or non-virtuous?
Yeah. It's absolutely brilliant. And I love that you present us this opportunity to even just in our worlds, in everyday reality, to listen for the frequency of Mars, listen to where Mars is happening around us, because it is. And if once you key your head to listen for it, you can say, oh, this is a Martian moment. Okay.
Yeah. Absolutely. And of course, Mars is stationing today.
Yeah. And I think the planet
sign. So we're definitely talking at the right time.
I think we're ready.
Yeah. Thanks for Harim. Thanks for getting me in today, rather. You timed it beautifully, the Mars station. It's great.
Yeah. If we're going to talk about Mars, we might as well, offer out a little something for his awakening. We've red carpeted you.
Yeah. I'll give you just a few more bits and pieces on this one, right? Yeah.
Okay.
Just a few more bits to say here, just to add to the fullness of the picture, as it were, right? So what we're looking at here is the idea that Mars does in fact have a combination of strength and gentleness, right? There's power, and then there's the use of that power, right? So it has the capacity to say, hew down something, right? But also to build up, right? Something. It's the use of its energy, right? You know, you can chop down a tree, right? But you can build a house, right? Or or you could. It's just the use of the energy. See, it's understanding how to work the Mars or employ the Mars. You know, it's just giving it some better archetype to what sort of metaphoric thing. Really, actually, I'm talking metaphor there, I suppose. But it's in a way, it's about enjoying the unshakability from finding and faithfully defending one's proper place.
Yeah.
Mars the attacker, Mars the defender. You find your place, and then you hold your place, right?
Yeah.
So, and then you have unshakability. Okay, so Mars is it's how you use that Mars, you know, as it were, right?
Yeah.
One of the virtues, the best virtue of Mars, is what could be called faithful obedience.
Yeah, because he was considered a sacred soldier to the Romans.
Yeah,
not just
I'll do anything. I'll do anything for you. You know, faithful obedience. That's like one man and his dog, right? You know,
naked,
right?
naked.
It's that sort of thing. You know, but it's the faithful obedience. Yeah, and so in the aegis of Mars, in the Mars's realm, the world of Mars, then you kind of are you're sort of leaving to go your own way, your own objects, your own self, and it's doing what you do, you know, doing what you have to do, and there's a weight of the necessity of that. So when you look at the order of planets and things, and you get to Mars being the first superior planet after the Sun, the superiority of Mars means it then takes everything that's come before it, everything that's built the person up before that time, all the planets before it, so Moon, Mercury, Venus, Sun. Then Mars is then, with the carrying the weight of that necessity, of it pushes that forwards. You see, it kind of then says, right, well, it's an outward action, you know?
Yeah.
And sometimes nothing can get in the way of that, you know? So it's a sense of discipline, obedience, it's faithfulness, it's strength, and it's growth. It's part of its taking something from what has been created so far and then taking it further outwards. And that's what Mars does.
That's brilliant. Okay, look.
So, yeah.
I ask you a
so
question.
To finish it up, the last keyword phrase I want to use is surrounds and upholds a well-disposed character and forges a purpose. Bingo. That's it. That's my Mars. So that's what I've telling you today. And it's all to add to anything else that you've heard before about Mars. It's just some extra bits, you know, to help bring, you know, think about it in terms of characters, you know, people you see in the world, what you hear, what you see, what you perceive.
Right. And we have free will, how we use these things. But if your knowledge of what is available is limited, you're working with not a full deck. So to be able to take your Mars and look at it from multiple perspectives and understand that in your free will of choices, you have multiple really successful options available for you to use that thing, that becomes a different place. So that's why we add to our pot of knowledge so that the choices become, the options become vast.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, look, we have a question before we go. People want to know, what do you think about the strength of Mars in Libra?
Okay. All right. So, well, Mars doesn't want to have to think about anything else often, right?
Yeah, it does not want to go in two directions. It's like that way.
Yeah, yeah. The nature of Mars is to, as we kind of talked about, already, is this idea that it will just go forwards with something, But when it's in Libra, okay, it has a bit of a paradox because it has to think about others. So the it has to consider, By the way, to consider and consideration is a Latin phrase to considere, yeah, which is actually to go with the stars, because sidereal, sidere, yeah.
Yeah.
So to go with is to run alongside, or consider is to consider, is therefore to be on the side of your astrological knowledge, to consider something, right? To go with your stars, right? So so when Mars is in Libra, one has to consider other people. You can't just go and do your own thing all the time. You have to always think of others.
Yeah. Mars comes into the temple of Venus, who is the only other energy he ever considered when he took action. So he's like, absolutely. I can't just effortlessly whack things around.
Absolutely. Fantastic. Yes, yes. So a good Mars in Libra might be a diplomat, a statesman, because they have to think about other things, you see. Mm-hmm. So they have to think about what they're representing. It's a bridge builder, right? But it's being forced to do it. So Mars can be expressing frustrations, right, at the bridge it's got to build across the river, right? Because there's this shoreline here, there's this fast flowing river of stuff to do, and then there's this other thing, and I've got to get the two to build a bridge, to find the link. So so it's the compromised compromise because Mars is okay, you mean I can do something if I do that first?
Yes.
Yeah, sure. Right, so that's a kind of Mars to listen at. You'll understand that that's because I want to do something, is Mars, right? It's kind of because I want to, I'm putting myself forwards, I'm trying to, but of course I have to do, other things first, as it were.
Yeah. Yeah. It's literally and Mars gets told there's consequences.
Yes. Yeah. Well, yes. Well, of course, consequences is what happens afterwards.
So in that position, Mars is at the forefront of seeing the action and the after, which I think is a beautiful energy with Mars in Libra, the forethought.
Yeah. Absolutely. Forethought before action.
Yeah. I'm the ultimate defender of Mars in Libra, mostly because I have it. Oh my
Excellent. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, we've got to wrap up here, you guys. And I know there are a couple more questions that are available down there, but I'm going to make sure you guys have the connections to Julian so you can ask him, or if you're wanting to study. And it's neat that you shared your story of how this came to you, because that's how astrological research happens. You're not always just sitting around being like, I need to know. Something sparks you, and then you're on the journey to investigate.
Mm-hmm. The way I always see it, and is that we are in astrology. I always think that if you've got a lot of beginners watching this, astrology is not separate, right, to the world around you. We're actually in it. It's quite a nice perspective to have. Yeah. We are actually right now, all of us, we're in outer space, because we're in the sky. We're in the sky. Our relationship with the sky is because we're in it. We're standing on that horizon. So underneath us is 180 degrees of Earth, if you like, or solidity, or things that can't be seen. Above us, and what we're standing on and in is the 180 degrees of the horizon above us, and therefore we are in it. We are in the sky, and therefore we're in the same space as the planets, right? So we're in astrology, you know, it's not outside, we're in it. And it's about finding your light, you know, because astrology is there to light your way, you know. A beautiful way of seeing it is the actual origin of the word glory is light. Yeah, something is glorious or glory is light filled or light emanating. Yeah, and think about that for a minute. You know, it's a nice thing to think about. And also the word cascade, right, is the idea of movement of light and the perception of the movement of light. So something cascading, right, is also, or you know, cascading upwards, cascading sideways, you know, whatever. It's to cascade is also a reference to the to experience of being in and of light. So we are in the cascading world around us all the time. You know, we perceive that.
We are in our astrology.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There we go. I've got so much to tell you. I guess another time, you know. I hope I haven't talked too much, Stormy. Was that all right?
No, it was brilliant. We had a great
yeah.
time. People are saying that they are mind blown and grateful, and you're welcome back, which is, we've had just a few guests who they were like, meh, no need to have them back. So you're on the comeback list.
Oh, good.
Good job.
Thank you. That's very kind.
Absolutely. So you guys,
Excellent.
I will make sure all of Julian's energy and information are in the description box down below this video, so you can reach out and make contact. And when the book is ready, we will definitely have you back and hear a little bit about what's going on in there. So
I've got something amazing to bring to the astrology world. I've just started working with a PhD psychologist, actually, and it's a new kind of help. I've got something so good, right? It is so, it's like, oh my God, it's so good. All right. So that's all I can say. You know, I'm very Leo. I'm just going to say I'm really pleased with what I'm creating. Whatever. Right? I'm doing astrology a long time, and I've got something great to show you all. So.
Well, I can't wait for you to share it with us, and we'll be looking out for it. So you guys, thank you so much for showing up this morning, and hopefully in the last hour, we gave you something that was worth the time you took to show up. So I look forward to connecting with you next week, where we will continue on. We will have 3 different Eat and Greets next week. Judith Hill will be here. We'll have Simon Vorster here, and Matthew Ouimet will be here at the end of the week. So more Eat and Greets to come, and we will see you guys next time. Bye, everybody.